And with race alone, we can take race and we can break down race by take a white American. We can say blonde, a blonde, brunette, somebody with dark hair, somebody with brown eyes, somebody with blue eyes. We can say a white person with red hair with freckles. We can break all this down and you can put it into this database and use it. And remember, race is a social construct also. That is something that was created by society over the years, which basically, that's what I'm trying to tell you. The goddamn social construct that was created by the elite in early American history and a lot of the people adopted for their own survival, it's not working today. So race really don't matter. I'm black. Nobody give a damn if you white or Mexican or black. I don't care. I treat everybody equal. I mean, if a white person break in my house, I do him just like I do a black person or a Mexican. So that's a social construct that really doesn't matter. But with that alone, like I said, you can break it down to so many different subcategories. And then what you do is you start studying. You might say a joke in the army they used to say about blondes being dumb. I used to hear white boys say that all the time. There's a joke I could tell you, but I'm not going to talk about it on here. But they said blondes are dumb. Okay, it's just it's a narrative. I got you, because most blonde-haired women in the United States are not real blondes. They dye their hair. Blondes make up less than 4% of the population, and some people close to the equator who have brown skin actually have blonde hair. Straight up. So you can break this down into all those different categories, and what you do is you start monitoring people, and then you take your data, you take the information, you put it in a database, and you start drawing conclusions based off trait, which will help the overall society, just like the NFL does. I was watching Nightcap the other day, and Chad Johnson, Ocho Cinco, he was talking about a player, and he said, man, look at his gait. He said, man, that boy it was a wide receiver. He said he has a gait like such and such. Then I heard Shannon Sharp come in and talk about, yeah, they also run a 1985 defense like the Browns. And Shannon Sharp talked about certain players. So even in football, they have a system similar to this where they're taking all this data, compiling it. It doesn't make sense to live in 2025 and have all this technology and you do not break everything down as much as you can, because all you're doing is basically thinking like a computer, but you're taking the data, putting it in the computer. I can easily say, out of all these markers here, I can take all these markers here and I can say, let's see which one of these markers will last the longest. If every day I write the same thing on this board until one of these markers run out of ink, it will be safe for me to go in later, and then I could come up with the hypothesis that the black is the best and the most dominant. I can say that blue is next. So what do? Every day I write something on this board. I write the same thing with every marker, and then whichever one runs out of ink first, I put it in the database. Then we can come here and tell the consumers, hey, this marker here runs out of ink first. This marker runs out of ink second. This marker runs out of ink third, and this one fourth. And I might say on a camera, this marker shows up better than this one. So you got to be mature when you're talking about DEI, because that's all it does. And no group of Americans are the same. None of them. So go back down to body. We talked about it earlier. You can take body and start breaking down subgroups. You might say that you noticed that certain people that weigh over 250 pounds that are under 6 foot tall have heart attacks when they work in office buildings where they have to walk up 3 flights of stairs. You can break all this down so much. So every category up here, you can break it down. Which, diversity, equity, inclusion, that's what it is. And in order for what Donald Trump is saying to work, which when he said no color merit-based system, I believe he means well. I do. But once again, in the beginning of this video, you notice I said how you got to be careful when you come into an organization just making changes. I've seen it happen too many times. In order for him to come in and remove this, you have historical problems that you need to fix. You need to give black people reparations. You need to invest in poor whites that have been historically oppressed over time. I've seen with my own 2 eyes in the Army a few white boys that come from, and that's how I learned about Appalachia, just listen to white boys talk junk to each other. That's how I learned about Appalachia and all that. Most of your boys is coming from Appalachia are going to be underprivileged and underdeveloped. They're poor. They're super dirt poor. Education is not the best, which was why J.D. Vance's story was so great, because that's the group he came from. You know, his mom had her issues. His mama raised him. That's something that you study. So, and that's why I keep saying I don't know why everybody is complaining about D.E.I. as if it's the only time some black person is getting a job. If that's the case, everybody in America should be D.E.I. because, like I said, it's no top-notch quality blood in America from no other part of the country that can walk around and say that they are that much better than anybody else. It's just not here. And if you're that delusional, hey, whatever you have to tell yourself to feel good, that's on you. But I don't like being delusional. So that's pretty much my take on DEI. It was something else I wanted to talk about. I know what it was. So I looked at another article. This Department of Defense article that I showed you here. You can read that, but I guess because I'm a veteran, it was a bunch of jargon to me. But you might find something in there that you like. Okay, so this article here, they talk about healthcare. I'm going to start out like this. So when you talk about healthcare, let's talk about Appalachia. The healthcare in Appalachia is not as good. A lot of the white people that live in Appalachia, they don't go to the doctor. Just like a lot of poor blacks from public housing in the ghetto, they don't go to the doctor either. I just heard a story about a guy, and I was just telling my dentist. Somebody told me the story about a guy who had a stroke. He had a stroke at 44 years old. And the reason he had a stroke, because he's never been to the dentist. So he had tartar and plaque built up in his mouth on his teeth. And somehow that blocked something. And the doctor said that caused him to have a stroke. And I was like, wow. And then I found out that everybody don't go to the dentist. To me, that's kind of like, it just wasn't my reality. I've been going to the dentist since I was, old enough to remember going to the dentist, getting a toothbrush and a little goodie bag. I remember going to the dentist when I was a kid, getting these little treasure chests that you could put your teeth in when you pulled them. But my point, that individual never went to the dentist. Do you know how many people out here in America don't go to the dentist because they don't have dental insurance? You got other people who don't have medical insurance. You got people who are uneducated and don't know. Appalachia, those are white people, the majority of them. They don't know. They're underdeveloped. They're socially immature. So this right here would include them. And if you're out there and you are against this, I would strongly suggest that you look in your family tree and tell me that your family members didn't benefit off of the New Deal. Lyndon Johnson didn't grow up rich at all. Neither did John Boehner, the ex-Speaker of the House, Boehner, whatever his name. He didn't grow up rich either. has a lot of people who grew up poor. White poor, black poor, Mexican poor. You see where I'm going with this? So this is pretty good. Oh, what I was gonna say. So back to that dental thing. So I found out that you need DEI in the medical field too. And one of the reasons was they talked about how African Americans have been discriminated in the medical field. And they talked about how a lot of the black medical schools had been closed, and you had Howard University and another university that was still open. Which I didn't know I didn't know Howard had a medical school. I did not. It was Howard, and now I'm curious. I want to know. I think it said Howard had a medical school. Oh, bear with me here. I think I circled it. That's not it right there. I cannot find it in this article I'm looking for. But anyway, it was Howard University and another university that were historically black colleges. And what somebody pulled out was that during COVID, you had an influx of patients that was coming through the hospitals. And so this was nice, because what you had was you had a social scientist went back and did research. Okay, here we go. Bam, right there. So it was Howard and Meharry, Meharry. It said the Flexner report of 1910 closed all but 2 of the historically black medical schools, Howard and Meharry, while 5 other schools closed. So they talked about, like, during COVID, right? I've talked to several people in the medical field who told me with COVID that COVID was man-made. That's what they say. I've talked to doctors and nurse practitioners and nurses. They said they think COVID was man-made. So whether it was or wasn't, who knows? I'm not Dr. Fauci. But they talked about how black people have been historically discriminated against in the medical field. They talked about how during COVID, it came back and bit America. Not black people, America. It bit them in the butt. And the reason it bit them in the butt, because they said you discriminated against a lot of black medical professionals, then you have a situation like COVID that hits your medical infrastructure, including the staff, were hit so hard with something they have never experienced nothing like that in their lives, and it almost took out our medical field. They said you had doctors who had COVID that died. They said you had doctors and nurses who worked around the clock, and some of them didn't even go to bed for 2 to 3 days. So they're walking around the hospital like zombies. They were taking prescription drugs and pills to stay up. You see how it came back and bit America in the butt? And when I say you, I know a lot of y'all probably you're not in a position to do nothing. So I can say, like, the low level piece of the trash that's in government that's responsible for the money, which they talked about in this article here. You didn't give money to the proper people in the proper schools, and then it came back and bit you in the butt. Now, I was also told by those medical professionals that COVID-19 was nothing. I said, what? They said COVID-19 was nothing. They told me go online and look up the bubonic plague. They said you had viruses throughout history that have came through and wiped out way more. I said, are you kidding? They said, no, these are different people from different places that told me this. They told me everybody was panicking about COVID. They said, man, COVID was nothing compared to what could happen. They said you got viruses out there that come every year, and what the scientists do, they come up with all these vaccines, and I was told they store these vaccines in these little giant containers inside of these labs, and when the virus comes, they have a way to capture the virus and they can identify it. And they said once they identify the virus, that's how they know what type of vaccine to give the population. I was like, wow, that's neat. And they said, so usually the scientists, which we need scientists from all walks of life. They said the scientists are always working like 10 to 20, 30 years into the future, trying to go out there and find all the possible viruses that can be created. Then they said you got to watch the animals, because some viruses come from animals and they get lucky, was the word one person used. They get lucky and can be transmitted to humans. And they used the word lucky because they said usually viruses that animals have will not jump over to a human. But in this article right here, African Americans were discriminated against in the medical field. Then you needed them. COVID wasn't for one group of people. You had all types of people that died during COVID. Colin Powell, one of my idols, died of COVID. It came back and bit society in the butt. You got wildfires in California right now. You had the hurricanes in North Carolina. You need firemen. You need medical professionals. Nobody out there is saying, we just need one type of person, because half the damn people that are affected by the California wildfires in North Carolina, they probably never did a day in the military, law enforcement, first responder. Probably never been a doctor, never been a nurse practitioner or a nurse, never been a scientist. But what do you need? You need your fellow American citizens to come to your aid. The National Guards are deploying and they're coming to assist. Same thing happens during ice storms. When there's ice storms in America, the National Guard from either within that state or from a neighboring state leave their family, soldiers leave their family, stay stateside, and they come and help fellow Americans. So when you're talking about you're not for DEI, you better be careful what you say, because it'll come back and bite you. In order for this society to work, you need to invest in everybody. You take the victims of the California wildfires, North Carolina victims, Hurricane Katrina, and the Floridians. You take all those areas there and the event that they're dealing with, or they dealt with. You remove all the great citizens that came to rescue them. You leave them where they are and you let them deal with it by themselves. You want me to tell you what you're going to have? You ever turned on your TV and looked at them people in Haiti or a third world country? You ever seen them people, how they're washing their clothes in a creek? The children are malnourished. You can see the men's ribs. You can see the women's ribs. They're all, their bodies are like desiccated. They're spiritually dead. That can be you in America. One generation, one storm, one wildfire, one virus outbreak, one season where the crops don't get the proper rain and nutrition they need to grow, one dry season where there's no rain. You, and I do mean you, meaning everybody, in America, you can disappear. You can be wiped out. You can be wiped off the face of the earth. One event. One event. That's why in the military, a lot of people who came in there that were racist, once they got in the military and realized, hey, I can't afford to, you realize you need everybody. And the quicker the American people, especially some of you damn Republicans who are trying to be racist, diversity, equity, inclusion includes you. I'm going to make a thumbnail for this video, and I'm going to make this thumbnail on purpose. And I'm going to make it where you see yourself in that thumbnail. Because you might think of yourself as some knight in shining armor coming through the streets of Europe saying, hooray, hooray, but that's not you, my friend. D.E.I. is Y-O-U, including me. See, I'm not cocky and arrogant. I'm here on a prayer anyway. I know I need God's grace and mercy. I'm not in denial. I need every prayer and every resource I can get. But this is not a bad thing. We definitely need to utilize this. We do. And back to the doctors, the medical field. Sometimes people from your walk of life, they understand a lot of things that you are into more than somebody else. So same with policing. You need police officers who can relate to you. You want teachers who can relate to different people. You don't see many teachers who were born and raised in the 1% of America going to Appalachia to help none of those people because they can't relate to them. Culture difference. You don't see that. So that pretty much sums up everything I want to really talk about in here. I mean, so when you talk about DEI, I guess the way I will conclude this podcast here, if you look at race, body, gender, age, social class, social status, religion, and culture, and you don't think that some characteristic inside of you would require somebody to be able to identify something about you that would be an asset to you, I don't know what to tell you. But there should be one of these that it should be at least two of these that includes you. It should be in one way or another. And if you can't find one your age, you're going to get old one day. And if your employer said that people 55 years old are dead weight and they fired you, you'd be mad. Like some of my friends that were engineers, they told me engineers have a hard time because they're always getting fired. And they said, I had a partner that worked for Exxon, and he said that he was let go because that's the way they make room for the new engineers. And it's also the way they trim the fat and cut the cost, because the older engineers, you have to keep giving them more money and more money. And he told me he made a lot of money. He almost made I think he said he made like 165 or something. I don't know. Yeah, but so DEI with all these right here, there's going to be a few of them that you fit into, whether you want to accept it or not. And DEI is not for just black people. It's not. And then remember what I told you. If you're white, you're not Prince Harry. No, you're not Prince Harry or King Charles. So you're going to some way, somehow need a helping hand. But this has been fourth person point of view, baby. I'm out.